Today's video is sponsored by Current.
We do not offer curriculum. We're not a school.
We were staying in a hotel, dine and dash, take food from grocery stores.
Said they paint a really good picture, and it's not until things start falling apart and then you start putting that puzzle back together.
17-year-olds on our team that's name is on leases.
On Friday, August 27th, the Bishop Sycamore Centurions lost the game to Stowe Rocks High, but they wouldn't have to wait long for redemption, as somebody thought it would be a great idea to have them suit up again only 2 days later. In that game, they took on one of the best teams in the country on national television with everybody watching. And what happened next caused lava from a dormant volcano to erupt into one of the biggest high school football scandals this country has ever seen. Despite the fact that the NFL and NCAA seasons just kicked off, recently the entire football world has been completely enamored with one team.
The mysterious high school football team we told you about yesterday, Bishop Sycamore.
Jamie Ostroff got her hands on the paperwork that Bishop Sycamore leadership sent.
A high school football team based in Ohio who managed to not only secure a game versus five-star national powerhouse IMG Academy, but they even managed to get ESPN to broadcast the game live. Bishop Sycamore proceeded to get drugged 58-0, but believe it or not, this wasn't even the first time they played IMG Academy. They actually took the field against the Florida powerhouse back in October of 2020. They lost that contest 56-6, which means that across 2 games versus IMG Academy, Bishop Sycamore was outscored 114-6. But after the second beatdown was broadcast live on ESPN, more and more people began to dig into the school's past. A past shrouded in controversy, lawsuits, bench warrants, and lies. Not only were they not the football powerhouse that they had billed themselves as, they may not have actually even been a real school. But would you believe that this viral high school football scandal, the likes of which we may have never seen before, may have actually been born out of good intentions? Be that as it may, we all know good intentions ain't never been especially reliable. Now the jokes have flown all over social media for weeks now, and while there's no denying these memes are funny as hell, the real victims in all of this are the Bishop Sycamore players. Say what you want about their questionable organization, but the players had to leave real blood, sweat, and tears out on the field through 2-a-day practices, early morning conditioning, injuries, time wasted, and now national embarrassment, as their desires to make their dreams come true were twisted, corrupted, and used to manipulate them. Many of them relocated, moved clean across the country, all for what they believed was a legit opportunity to further their careers. But for many of them, instead of getting those D1 offers they were promised, they ended up just becoming the butt of all jokes. And to be honest, it kind of pisses me off. Today is time to look beyond the memes and see what's really going on here. And I gotta warn y'all ahead of time, what lies beyond the jokes is a warped, tangled mess of a story. This is my first video on Bishop Sycamore, and there's so many angles to this story that this may not be my last. But to start things off today, I want to discuss how they've been operating in the shadows for several years, going by different names through multiple rebrands, how they came to exist in the first place, and why this may not be the last time we hear from them. Other than that, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. My name is FlemLo Raps, and this is what happened to Bishop Sycamore. Cue the Wayne.
Yeah, you'll never no quitter, 'cause I'ma go get her.
Alright, real quick before we jump in, gotta give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, Current. This is not a prepaid card. This is a way to manage your finances that's actually suited for the modern world we live in today. It's 100% mobile and it allows for some cool perks. You can deposit your check using only the camera on your phone. There's no hidden fees or minimum balances. One of the best features is the fact that you can get your paycheck up to 2 days early. An unbelievably clutch feature that can keep you far away from them payday loans. Now, they call it the future of banking because it's been simplified and made much more efficient than a typical banking experience. You can send and receive money with no problem. The card also has up to $100 in overdraft protection just in case. So if you're interested, click the link in the description and get you a Current card today. Shout out to Current once again for sponsoring the video. Without further ado, let's get it. I want you to imagine an academy meant for young athletes between high school and college. Maybe they need a few more credits, or maybe they just want to get more film out to potential colleges, all in hopes of earning that scholarship. As some of y'all may know, these academies actually exist throughout the country and across various sports. In fact, IMG Academy, the school that thrashed Bishop Sycamore on live TV and set off this entire firestorm, they literally operate as a post-grad academy themselves. They actually provide a great service to kids in need of that additional year to get physically, socially, and academically ready for college. And it's this concept that was actually the original idea for the quote-unquote school that would go on to become Bishop Sycamore. But unlike IMG and TCS, Bishop Sycamore's initials, well, let's just say they perfectly describe the school's academic landscape. Your boy Shakespeare once said, all's well that ends well. But in the case of Bishop Sycamore, it's too bad the reverse isn't true. In fall of 2018, Roy Johnson started Christians of Faith Academy, a private online school that would use their football program to help low-income and underprivileged students earn college opportunities. A good idea, but it was only half-baked. And if you ever seen somebody take a cake out the oven too soon, it collapses in on itself. COF Academy didn't have an actual school building, home football field, or even a fully fleshed out plan. And according to an article published by USA Today, this online school didn't even have a functioning website, like literally the bare minimum. One thing they did have was a determined and resourceful Roy Johnson on their side. A guy looking to leave his mark on the world, but he had a tendency to sometimes paint outside the lines. He gathered a small group of guys looking for an opportunity to do some good and hopefully make some money. And while they were woefully unprepared, they looked to attack this new challenge head on. The best thing Roy Johnson and COF Academy had going for it was his relationship with AME Church, a church originally established back in 1787 that now spans across North America, Bermuda, the Caribbean, Sub-Saharan Africa, and South America. We're talking a massive church said to have somewhere around 3 million members worldwide. The church was supposedly a huge financial backing for COF Academy, and they really helped to somewhat legitimize the school. That affiliation also allowed them to receive donations of resources in the form of money, land, and free work from professional architects and engineers. And according to Roy himself, these donations of time, resources, and expertise were put into motion with plans of building a large, beautiful campus in Northeast Ohio. They even sent out video of the prospective campus to recruits, all in an attempt to entice the kids to sign up. The church affiliation also allowed Christians of Faith Academy to operate outside of the Ohio Department of Education's normal structure. Basically, there's a section in the Ohio Administrative Code that allows certain private schools to avoid seeking charter from the Board of Education because of, quote, truly held religious beliefs. These schools are referred to as O8s, which is short for OAC 3301-3508, because really ain't nobody trying to say all that, so they call them O8s for short. So in Ohio, O8s basically get to operate under a much more relaxed set of rules. And if you're trying to get a school off the ground quickly, this is actually extremely clutch. It looked like Roy Johnson had slipped and fallen into the perfect situation, but he would soon find himself at the very bottom of that exact same slippery slope. Now, people have actually been digging around this whole Bishop Sycamore saga since they were COF Academy way back in 2017 and 18. ThisWeekNews.com published a series of articles starting back in August of 2018 when people started asking questions about COF. At the time, it seemed pretty strange that a school who had just popped up out of nowhere were scheduling every single one of the powerhouse high school football programs in Ohio. And this was despite having no building, no history, no working website. They definitely didn't seem to have the infrastructure to support the schedule that they were boasting. And some people may wonder, why open up against only the biggest schools? schools. Wouldn't it make sense to take an easier schedule in your first year of existence, then slowly increase the difficulty level over time? That seems to make a little bit more sense. An old article from starlocalmedia.com published way back in 2012 may actually provide a small hint to possible motivation. This particular article focuses on playoff games, but I think the general idea still applies. It states that the amount of money a team makes depends mostly on the team you're playing against and how many fans they have. The article says that in Texas, to determine how much each school makes, the total revenue from ticket sales is combined, and then all expenses, including the stadium rental and cost of the officiating crew, is subtracted. The remainder is then divided equally between the two participating schools. So in theory, COF stood to make a larger return by only playing the bigger schools. Now you might be thinking, well Flem, that's cool, but what the hell do the bigger schools get out of playing a team with basically no fans? Well, sometimes when you already rolling in the dough, every single move you make doesn't actually have to be about money. According to Ohio native Ty Arlesick, who reached out to me via email, the reason teams in Ohio scheduled them was out of necessity for a game to fill their schedules. Teams in Ohio, especially successful ones without conferences, struggle to find games to fill their 10-game schedule. So teams either find a bad team similar in size, a team from Canada, or face a smaller team that they know will give them points that go towards their Harbin rankings, which determine their playoff seeding. Other reasons include a break from playing top competition to get an easy W in the win column, and a nice stat pad game is always nice.
Yeah, in college we start every season against Appalachian State or some slack Division II team. Kick the living out of them. Get their confidence up.
COF used the schedule as part of their recruiting strategy. The pitch was basically something along the lines of, playing all the top schools would allow you to gain exposure. This is top talent, so the whole place is going to be flooded with scouts. You come here, you play well, you get a D1 scholarship. That's just what it is. Problem is, not only was the recruiting and recruiting in general filled with a whole bunch of false promises, you gotta remember this is high school, and in Ohio at least, recruiting's not even allowed. Here's a quote from Coach Varney at Grove City High on the COF Academy recruiting situation. They were recruiting my kids, calling them, picking them up, taking them on visits, and who knows what they were telling these kids. They convinced them that they were gonna get them to a D1 school. They told one kid they were gonna get him reclassified as a junior so he could start his recruiting over again. Bro, recruiting gotta be the only job where like bold-faced lying is considered a valuable job skill. Only a few months into the school's inaugural season, and they ran into a huge problem. AME Church, the school's only source of financial backing, they backed out. After opening the season 0-3, Roy Johnson woke up to some terrible news. The AME Church posted a message on their website completely denying any involvement of any kind with Christians of Faith Academy. Then later, just to further drive the point home, the church's attorney posted this message. The AME Church was never affiliated with them. Persons that were involved in this, I believe, may be AME members of a local church or something like that, but they've gone off into their own business enterprise and naturally wanted to present their business enterprise to the AME Church and its members to see if they would be interested in that. If there was any representation that there was an affiliation or that the AME Church or the 3rd District was approving or disapproving any of their actions, that is not the case. There is no affiliation. Straight up. Now at first glance, the whole no affiliation thing doesn't really seem to add up, as This Week News found several emails shared between Roy Johnson and the church. Alright, this might take a second to break down. So Roy Johnson said in an interview that he started working with AME Church in an economic development role way back in 2013. According to him, the following year, he and the church leaders decided to expand his role to outside the church. It was at that point that he formed an LLC called the Richard Allen Group in order to conduct business in connection with the church. And to be honest, the whole thing does kind of make sense, as Richard Allen was the name of one of the founding members of AME Church. So 2014, Roy creates the Richard Allen Group. And according to USA Today, he's actually got documents that seem to show some sort of definite connection to to the church. For example, the Richard Allen Group reportedly opened a realtor's office meant to provide housing to AME church members in low-income neighborhoods back in 2017. USA Today also posted this scan of a $100,000 check that seems to be from the AME church, and the check was deposited into a UBS bank account back in 2015. The account number that the check was deposited into, it belonged to the Richard Allen Group. So it's some type of business going on here. Maybe a local branch had overstepped and not properly run it up the chain. Or maybe Roy, who was said to be a member of the church, had figured out some type of underhanded way to get the ball rolling on his school through the church without their knowledge. It's honestly not clear at this point, but they got several pending lawsuits that will likely get to the bottom of this whole thing at some point. Now, real quick, I want to go back to the statement made by the church's lawyer. Remember, he said the AME church was never affiliated with them. Persons that were involved in this, I believe, maybe AME members of a local church or something like that. Well, another article published by USA Today actually states that Roy N.J. Richardson, a former Ohio State and NFL linebacker who was involved in some capacity, at some point had represented themselves as the president and secretary of the AME church. So the lawyer's theory may actually hold some weight. But the only thing we know for sure is that once the church announced that it had no affiliation with the school, COF's financial backing went up in smoke, and everything quickly fell apart. Do you believe Roy Johnson, the Richard Allen Group, and the COF Academy had good intentions and then had the rug swept from underneath them by the church? Or do you believe that they were scamming from the very beginning and basically just out for a quick money grab? Either way, their insistence on rushing such a massive project with kids' futures on the line proved to be one hell of a misstep. When parents send their kids to college, post-grad academy, or whatever the hell COF was, they're entrusting their child to a set of adults who are tasked with basically taking over the raising of their kids. The mother of Demonte Ware flew her son halfway across the country after being promised that he was in good hands. Demonte was excited for the opportunity to play for a high-profile football program, and his mom was on board with the somewhat alternative education for her son as he worked towards his goal of gaining a college scholarship. But the eventual $800 round trip didn't deliver any of that. Here's a quote. "They neglected his education and they've been having him stay in these hotel rooms. You promised him this and promised him that and didn't do any of it. It's false advertisement. You're messing with my son's life." The part about living out of hotels has been repeated by multiple involved parties, and some of the kids said stealing food via Dine and Dash was just a normal way of life. The team left numerous unpaid hotel bills and restaurant bills in their wake. According to a Fox News article, Roy also skipped out on paying a $1,000 paintball bill and nearly $8,000 in unpaid dues owed to a Columbus training facility. And it seems that he involved the kids on the team in all of these situations. They were supposed to be helping young boys grow into men, but instead they made low-level criminals out of the kids that they were supposed to be looking after. Now, it wasn't all bad, as some kids reported positive experiences with COF. For some of them, it was literally their only opportunity to play high school ball, proving that the original concept for the school was a solid one. And it definitely could have worked without all the shadiness. But poor planning, poor execution, over-promising, and greatly under-delivering, that caused the school to flame out in only a matter of months. COF Academy went 2-10 in their first season, with one of their wins coming during a week where they were actually scheduled to play a familiar opponent. Only they never took the field versus IMG Academy in their original form, since the game was canceled after the Ohio State Department of Education revoked the school's registration 1 week earlier. They were still actually able to replace the game with reigning Sports Academy, and funny enough, that ended up being one of the 2 games they actually won that season. Roy Johnson's Richard Allen Group left the situation with a $100,000 lawsuit levied against them for unpaid hotel rooms. They were also sued for an additional $92,000 after taking out a loan to purchase a 2007 Range Rover, but never actually paying the money back. They were also placed under investigation for fraud, but No arrests were made by the time the investigation concluded. Now you'd think that would be the end of the story. Roy would walk away and try his hand at something else, like anything else, bro. But only a few months later, and Roy, he was back. He simply rebranded COF Academy and they became the Youth Build Centurions. Basically, they had the exact same infrastructure as before, online non-charter school with a football team, same thing. And because of that, Youth Build had pretty much the exact same problems that COF had. In addition to that, they even had games canceled for having multiple players on the roster who were over the age of 18 and had clearly used up their 4 years of high school eligibility. It wasn't the 30-year-olds we all saw in the memes, but there were 19 and possibly 20-year-old kids on this roster, some of which had actually played in junior college games already. These rosters have actually been discussed on message boards and forums for years now. After a short-lived existence, Youth Build rebranded once again in 2019, now finally going by the name you're all familiar with, Bishop Sycamore. According to USA Today, of the 8 listed staff members for BS, 5 of them were also listed as staff members for COF Academy. But Roy Johnson isn't listed as the founder of Bishop Sycamore. That would be Andre Peterson. Now apparently Andre wasn't listed as a staff member at COF, but his son did attend the school. And Andre, who was previously a coach, was interested in helping out with the team. So he made the trip up, met Roy, and apparently they spent a decent amount of time around each other. Here's a couple of quotes from Andre. "I like the concept of it. I'm a former football player at Youngstown State, and I kind of wanted Javon to get the opportunity to play against some of the best competition, not just in Ohio, but around the country. I like what they showed me, and I like what I was hearing." Here's him talking a little bit about his relationship with Roy Johnson. As me and him talked more and more, he kind of opened up more and more about what was going on and the concerns that he had as far as the financing when the church backed out. You always think, is somebody trying to hustle you? I didn't feel like it was a hustle. Then after COF shut down, Andre said this: "I like the concept of what Roy was trying to do." So me and some of the other parents and some of the people that were involved in COF originally decided to continue that. COF closed down, and then I started Bishop Sycamore in 2019. So Roy Johnson, who was the quote-unquote face of COF Academy, would now become the head coach of Bishop Sycamore. It was basically the same thing all over again. But the rebrand did little to throw detractors off their trail, with Ben Fareed, who had been tasked with investigating COF Academy, saying this: "It's using the exact same methods, the exact same schemes, with the exact same people." In some of Bishop Sycamore's early games in 2019, the first season that they played, they wore COF Academy's uniforms. So yeah, it's the exact same scam. They just changed the name. Rumors of overage players persisted, as Bishop Sycamore's roster, like Youth Build before them, was said to include players that were 19 and even 20 years old. But even the age advantage couldn't overcome a poorly run team with little to no stability or structure. And the team ended up going 0-6 during the 2020 season. But even as more and more schools became hip to the whole Bishop Sycamore thing, when the pandemic hit, filling up that schedule became even more difficult. And Bishop Sycamore took full advantage of that fact. Schools were scrambling, things were getting canceled at the last minute, and people couldn't find games. That's when Roy Johnson struck. He put the school back out there and got tons of games for Bishop Sycamore. They're getting heat right now for playing on Friday and Sunday. But last year they played a game in Tennessee and then came back and played in Ohio the next day. The OHSAA informed all these schools, you know this is not a real school. You know many of these kids are over 18. By and large, the school said, thank you for informing us, and played the games anyway. I actually took a lot from that. Roy Johnson is a pretty resourceful guy. Knowing that teams would be scrambling to fill schedules, he pounced on it and used that to his advantage. The whole thing about them playing the game in Tennessee and then going back to Ohio and playing the next day is pretty crazy. But what's even more interesting is the fact that many schools knew but still had zero problem putting their kids up against Bishop Sycamore. And as much as we want to get on Bishop Sycamore, and rightfully so, the schools that knew they had older kids and then put their kids out there anyway, they got to be held responsible as well. The concept of Bishop Sycamore had began with good intentions, and even if they did want to bend a few corners to speed things up a bit, there's a lot easier ways to scam money than starting a damn school. Because of that, I believe that at his core, Roy Johnson is a good guy. A guy who does want to help, does want to do some good, and yeah, does want to make his money. But he also kind of seems to be a guy who wants to do all of the cool stuff that people see, but who doesn't really cross his T's and dot his I's when it comes to the back end. There's stories from Andre Peterson of times he saw Roy pay for kids' food out of his own pocket. And that's great, but the issue is the fact that you had them people kids out there with no way to feed them in the first place. And had he taken the first L with COF Academy, then fell back for a year or two while he planned his next move, I'd understand that, and honestly, I would probably be on here defending him. Jumped out a little too quick, realized he was in over his head, took his L and then fell back to lick his wounds, then take a little time to prepare to make that comeback, come back stronger than ever. Like, to me, it don't get no better than that. But since he jumped right into the next season after what happened that first year, and then had the exact same issues for the next couple years, yeah, not even I can defend that. Everything about the way the school was run was half-baked, misleading, or worse. They couldn't even handle the summer 7-on-7s properly. According to a story from Awful Announcing, one dad was disappointed that the 7-on-7s for the team weren't coming together. So he tells the coach he's gonna take his son to a few camps for colleges that they were interested in. Roy says, cool, we'll bring the rest of the team too. In the very first hotel, the dad checks out. He ends up paying for his room and his son's room. Then the very next day, he checks his account. And apparently, his card also got charged for 15 other rooms for 3 nights straight, despite the fact that he left after the first night. The total cost was around $2,500, and apparently, the rest of the team's rooms never got paid. They charged this dad's card since it was the only one they had on file. Now, once he talked to the hotel and explained everything, they did refund him his money. But that same dude said it happened again in Dallas. I assume a little bit of time had passed, but he said this time the team was driving up in a bus, and because he was driving himself, he'd made it into town a few hours before the team got there. So they asked him if he'd be cool with picking up the room keys from the hotel. I have no idea why he agreed, but he did. And for the last little part, I'll read his words directly. The next day, my son gets a phone call in his room and they said we need payment for your room. So we came back to the hotel and talked to the hotel and they said nothing's been paid for. So this whole process started again at the second hotel we were at with them. But I just wanted to illustrate that this thing they were doing, not paying for hotels and restaurants, it wasn't a one-time thing. And because this was during the summer, just 7-on-7s, it wasn't even necessary to be traveling and incurring expenses if you couldn't afford to pay them. Now, I gave these cats the benefit of the doubt early on. The whole we were expecting backing from the church thing and then that went up in smoke, I mean, that seemed at least somewhat plausible. But now you've come back for your third iteration. You're no longer affiliated with the church and you now knew that going into the season. And you still not paying your debts, skipping out on the bill. One kid even said during an interview that the school was putting the hotel rooms that they had no intentions of paying underneath the kids' names, getting them to sign without their parents' consent. And the more you dig, the more you find this consistently just scummy trash behavior. Now, at the beginning of the video, I said the real victims in all of this were the players. They were manipulated and placed in dangerous situations over and over again, all due to the BS from BS. Complex actually got a pretty interesting first-hand account from Aaron Boyd, who played on the team. Here's what he had to say. They sent me books with like stuff on how the school was supposed to look, blueprints and everything. They told us we was gonna be on Netflix, like they recruited us telling us we was gonna be on the show. They told us we're gonna be the IMG of the Midwest. But they lied to me and my mama. For the last month and a half, we had like 35 players. We had to go rob Myers and Kroger's and Walmart because that was the only way we could eat. We didn't go to school. Like, we never went to school. I can't lie, they tried once. They took us to like a community library one day. It was already October, like the season was about to be over. It was like at this point, well, I ain't going to school. Dude was going in. Several people have reached out to me about the fact that Ohio has known about the whole Bishop Sycamore thing for years. They've known about Youth Build. They've known about COF Academy. And people have been trying to get this story run this entire time. But for some reason, none of the local stations or whatever wanted to run the story. Maybe they thought there was really nothing there, maybe they thought it was uninteresting, I don't know. But the guys behind Bishop Sycamore finally overstepped with their game versus IMG Academy on ESPN, still chasing exposure as opposed to solidifying the school's foundation. They basically decided to take the social media approach to starting a school, gain attention at all costs, and worry about the rest later. You can get hella TikTok followers like that, but when people sending their kids to you and kids entrusting their futures to you, you really need to have your together from the jump. During their game versus IMG Academy, Bishop Sycamore was clearly outmatched and honestly didn't even belong on the same field with that team. They literally played and lost the game 2 days earlier and were then basically thrown to the wolves on national TV to get beat up and embarrassed. With only about 35 kids on the roster, they still didn't even have enough helmets for everybody and were seen sharing equipment mid-game. Many of the kids played both offense and defense, which is fitting, I guess, since they were originally called the Iron Men. But on one day's rest, it was clearly irresponsible to send them out there to get drugged. And for what? So somebody's pockets could get lined? So you could use ESPN in your recruiting pitches? I'm sorry, that's trash, man. I came into this story knowing it was a big deal to people, but I honestly didn't know why people was going so nuts over this story. Maybe it's because I do these videos and I read crazy stuff like every day, so it takes a whole lot to just surprise me, I guess. I basically just thought it was kind of funny and figured I'll get to it when I can. But the more I've looked into this story, the more I've realized how much potential Bishop Sycamore had. I understand why people like Andre Peterson saw what Roy Johnson was doing and wanted to be a part of it. I completely get it, and the vision was honestly beautiful. But everybody got ideas and they really ain't worth a damn, because your ability to execute that vision, that's what's going to determine whether or not you're successful. Now, despite all of that, it is somewhat surprising that Bishop Sycamore has no plans of going away. They've actually hired a new coach with full plans to move forward. Now, if they do, I can only hope that they clean up their operation and return to the original vision of COF Academy. Despite the fact that Roy Johnson is no longer with them, his original vision is still a really solid one. But it's gonna be up to Andre Peterson and new head coach Tyron Jackson to slow down, take time to steady the foundation, secure their financial backings in writing. This ain't the Wild West, bro. And run this thing like a legit organization, not some fly-by-night bullshit. And maybe in 3 to 5 years, we can look back and something positive will have come out of this. It's definitely unlikely, but it is possible, bro. So through multiple iterations and rebrands, the Bishop Sycamore saga continues. But an interview conducted by NBC seems to suggest that a school which originated with truly held religious beliefs may finally be ready to tell the damn truth.
We do not offer curriculum. We're not a school. That's not what Bishop Sycamore is. And I think that's what the biggest misconception about us was, and it was our fault.